Hello, everyone. This is your favorite history buff. We are traveling with history. This time, I want to do a video on one of my favorite scientists, one of the greatest minds in history, George Washington Carver. Talk about his time starting as a slave, and of course, dying as one of the most influential men in U.S. history, often known as the Peanut Man. And I'm sorry to tell fans, he did not invent peanut butter. That's a myth. Though he did make peanuts more popular. But I would like to go into this story and through his alternatives, how all of this was made possible. There's so much rich information on him. I could tell you this. I can't cover it all, but I can cover the most important parts. Parts that made me admire him so much. I could cover his education. I can cover his slight relationship with the Wallace family, future Vice President Henry Wallace. His passion for plants. His relationship with certain U.S. presidents. And of course, everything else that may come to be. I want everyone to know why this man was so admired. But for now, I think pretty soon we're about to get to the main course. To the life of the Peanut Man. Who made a plant obscure, a crop I mean. They made it from obscure to very popular. It's a wonderful story, if I do say so myself. Had to deal with a lot of bigotry, prejudice, racism back then. But even they would have to be impressed with his work and how he helped the South. Alright, let us begin. He was born to Mary and Giles on a farm near Diamond, Missouri. Of course, his father died a week after he was born. And, well, sadly, he was abducted by slave raiders, him and his mom and his sister. As the original owner, Moses Carver, hired people to find him and his mom and his sister, but they could only find him. Of course, this was during the Civil War, before slavery was abolished. And let's just say, he eventually was treated a little less harsh, from what I've seen. But there's also the thing with Moses Carver, his namesake, Carver, encouraging him to learn more. He was so fascinated with education and, of course, houseplants. He wasn't really strong enough to work the fields, so I can't say everything was fair for him, hence slavery. So he was sent to work inside with houseplants, which he did well with. And, well, eventually, slavery was abolished. He would leave home at age 11. Of course, he did take the name George Washington Carver. I don't think he realized the importance of the name George Washington. I suppose he just enjoyed the name. But, nonetheless, he made his own name. And I would like to say that his education went through different schools. He was adopted by a childless black couple, Mariah and Andrew Watkins, Neosho, Missouri. They further encouraged him in his education. And of course, He did many household chores for them. Of course, the schoolhouse was a bit disappointing for him despite all the different bits of education. It was a school we went to that was close to the night, and one time I spent the night at a barn so we could attend that school. He eventually went west like many other black folks for a better life. He also witnessed horrible things like a mob of white men killing a black man. Sad but true. Went to different schools for education. May not have been the best, but he was certainly a very curious young man, and that helped him. He eventually earned his high school diploma in his 20s. It was quite an impressive feat. Never too late to get an education, let alone for high school. You could say he was the inspiration. And of course, he eventually went to college. That would be, the first college he went to rejected him because he was black. Sad but true. Then he would attend Simpson College in Indianola, Iowa. Originally, he wanted to study music and arts. One of his teachers, Ed Abud, encouraged him to go for agriculture. Went to an Iowa agricultural college. Actually, he was the only African American with an advanced degree in scientific agriculture, making him an asset for future plans. That is where I will get to the next part of this video. Tuskegee. He was sought out by He was sought out by Booker T. Washington, who founded the Tuskegee School because he had learned about George Washington Carver and about his impressive feats with agriculture. He had to get him. He needed a man such as Carver to teach at his school. And of course, he did accept that. But he also had to, of course, George Washington Carver did also had to deal with the conditions at Tuskegee. Obviously, not very sanitized bathrooms, living quarters. It was kind of a poor school in a manner of speaking. It was still successful. He worked as not only a teacher, but as a researcher. It was, how should I say, a daunting task. But he was beloved by his students and other teachers. He also taught poor white farmers in the South in different areas when he traveled. He taught them about crop rotation. It was not only more productive, but much cheaper. It would go and help in their lives. Made it a lot easier. It also helped during future financial problems. He was also great with alternative use of peanuts. Sugar, flour, vinegar, cosmetics, paint, and ink from undesirable peanut crops. Oh yeah, he made a lot of uses of those things, including certain replacements for meats. One man could do that with the help of students or assistants. You know he's got it made. It's a nice way to get through. As for his romantic life, well, let's just say he may have had a romantic relationship with teachers, although Booker T. Washington discouraged that. Either one, either wanted it to be a more serious marriage or for them to break it off. I guess he wanted order in the school. And, and George Washington Carver was no exception to that. Although some historians speculated that Carver was bisexual, we don't know if that's true or not. But he never married or had any children of his own. I guess you could say the students he met in his life were considered his children, especially later on in life when they would exchange letters. Let's just say he did what he loved, despite the harsh conditions. He was a strong man indeed. Now, let's get to things. Before we get to their relationship, let's talk about how George Washington Carver did develop traveling schools, outreach programs, and that's what helped farmers and helped the economy in the South. And how he learned alternatives for peanuts such as peanut lemon punch, chili sauce, peanut sausage, charcoal rudder, and axle grease. Alright. Now, Booker T. Washington was his hero. He really admired him, of course. But he also had a strenuous relationship with him, very stressed. Both of these men, in their own right, are great in history. They may have different ways of helping with social justice, helping their oppressed people, but in the end, they both wanted the same thing. They wanted what was best for the oppressed. Although Booker T. Washington discouraged teachers dating, he may have gave unfair wages and empty promises. Those were the negatives. The positives were, of course, he did always support George Washington Carver in his research. He vouched for him, helped him launch his career, helped him become famous. He always had his back in that regard. And when Booker T. Washington died in 1915, say George Washington Carver was devastated. Many people were devastated. Rocky relationship or not, it is said that he was respected. And of course, I'm very happy that they ended on good terms, despite their differences. I know Booker T. Washington wanted to play the patient game and earn the respect of the white people, hence his talking to politicians, such as President Theodore Roosevelt. And I know others wanted immediate action. George Washington Carver, for example. And can you blame him? No. All this time of oppression, generations of generations, that's bound to get to people. Of course, that would also lead to many civil rights acts. That's later on in life. That's what happens. It's best to admire these two and what they've done for history. But for now, let me move on to the next clip. It was the sad part of his death, but before I get to that, let me get to a point where George Washington Carver did help advise Theodore Roosevelt. He also showed him how the institution worked at Tuskegee. He was also invited, I believe, in the 1920s by then Vice President Calvin Coolidge for a visit. He was visited by him. And George Washington Carver gave him agricultural advice. Matter of fact, Carver impressed even the most racist lawmakers. They respected him. And of course, he advised President Franklin Delano Roosevelt during the time of the Depression. He tried peanut oils to help massage FDR for the polio he suffered most of his life. Matter of fact, he tried that for a lot of patients to help him out. It was a very unique task, to say the least. Medical alternatives. Peanuts were used for that. Sadly, George Washington Carver died on January 5th, 1943. Memorial site was placed for him in July the same year. And of course, he died of anemia, a blood disorder. He suffered symptoms of tiredness, weakness, shortness of breath, headaches, and a reduced ability to exercise. So yeah, let's just say it wasn't pleasant. In the end of his life, he felt the feeling of confusion, the feeling of possibly passing out, losing consciousness, and a constant increase of thirst, and of course, a pale skin. The condition of anemia would be the blood loss, decrease in red blood cells, and of course, constant bleeding. The spirit Tuskegee, honored by many. I'd say blacks and whites alike honored him, as they should. It's not easy with a life like his. And he was a strong Christian till the end of his life. Although he may have had a little bit of different views on Jesus, still respected him. And of course, as you see, the memorial on the right, his picture, mentions everything, because Tuskegee was in Alabama. It says, a life that stood out as a gospel of self-forgetting service. He could have added fortune to fame, but caring for neither. He founded happiness and honor and being helpful to the world. That is the kind of man he was. A perfect description. He never wanted all that power. He just loved helping people. I believe that was his reason of being a scientist, other than his interest in botany. I did forget to mention his friendship with the Wallace family. Of course, he did have a somewhat complicated relationship with Henry Wallace, the Secretary of Agriculture, because of their conflicting beliefs, and of course the future vice president, but they both had a respect for each other, and I suppose they both wanted what was best in this country. Well, let's just say they both made an influence, and that will lead down to the next point of this video. I did mention his faith in God, his ability to make peanuts more popular, and to revolutionize science. I did mention that. I never mentioned exactly all the letters his students and fans gave him. He would constantly exchange with them. They'd call him Father. I know I mentioned it earlier, but I wanted to mention it again to remind people how much loved he was by everyone. Everyone that mattered. And how he's memorialized as a black scientist, a black man, went from oppression to scientific brilliance. I'll read the quote here. A proud son of Missouri, a true humanitarian, a trailblazer in agricultural science, technology, and philanthropy. Role model for persistence, determination, imagination, inspiration in all aspects of our lives. He did have this uncanny ability for terrible timing. He never told people when he would come. for any presentations. He'd just come. So I guess students, fans, many people were confused by that. It's funny in a way. Oh, maybe not to them back then, but that's just the way he was. He had his ways. I guess you couldn't change that about him. He was not much for war. He was more of a peace lover. Who could blame him? I know for some people, you need to have war before peace. I think he wanted a different way. And, well, war is terrible no matter what you think of it. But his peanuts did help in the wars. They've rationalized foods, and the peanuts went from obscure to very popular. Probably one of the 6 most popular crops in the U.S. And you know who to thank for that? This man was one to go through different schools. Just like at the beginning mentioned, his time was nothing but true spirit. Even in his weakened state on his deathbed, he still wanted to keep working. There was no really bringing him down. But I will say, even he has his limits as a mortal man. He can only do so much, even on his deathbed. And amongst mourning people. Well, look at what we have today. If all of you love your peanuts and alternatives with peanuts, you know who to thank. I know who to thank. If I could go visit that area, I'd like to pay my respects. For any of those two that have paid their respects, good on you. This man, like I said, made a name in his own right. This man made science easier. And even during the Great Depression, especially in the South, it was his crops, his scientific research that helped farmers. It may not have been, it would help alone, but it was a big help. And these alternatives, say done with food, products, and the economy. And it's hard to argue with those results. The only black man at the time specialized in agricultural science. I'm sure he was a great musician, but this was his fate. To share his science. So I'm glad the teachers encouraged him. I'm glad his adoptive parents encouraged him. I am very happy with all of them for doing that. And now, as we get through, I did want to thank everyone for watching this video. I hope you liked this all. It's not easy finding everything. Not that I found everything. But I also think reading books on him are helpful as well. Not just the internet. Learn about his struggles, about his triumphs. And what's the point of triumph without struggle? I believe the greater the struggle, the greater the triumph. And yes, he was an example of that. George Washington Carver. I'm pretty certain I'm biased towards him. One of my favorite scientists. I'm sure he's one of America's favorite scientists. I believe his death may have sent shockwaves, but his legacy lives on. And on it shall go. Hence, I'm still talking about him today. Anyways, hope you all enjoyed this video. Thank you so much. Like and subscribe. I'll get you more PowerPoint presentations.